Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
This is what is so frustrating. We're going to put the PDF up on screen a little bit later of the actual British government document. It's one of literally thousands that say the same thing. They talk about us, how we're animals, how they're manipulating us, how they're controlling us. And when you have all these admissions of what they're doing and how they want to kill the majority of us, and then the public argues with you, oh, the government wouldn't kill 3,000 on 9/11. Oh, the government wouldn't stage Gulf of Tonkin. It's just asinine. We're going to go to calls coming up in the next segment, but Alan, you've hit upon the key here. It's this predatory mindset. They believe it's a virtue. It's like a wolf killing a sheep. The wolf doesn't feel guilty. This is what it's doing. And how do we get people to recognize the scientific and technological elite takeover that Eisenhower warned us about? How do we let them understand that there is a group watching and manipulating us like we are bacteria in a petri dish? Only by getting outside the control paradigm, seeing the larger picture, can people have any chance of stopping this. But they've trained the slaves to giggle and laugh and be delusional, where if they laugh something off, that makes it not exist, and laugh at their utter destruction.
It's that, but it's also, we've got to understand something. Most folk don't know there's been a war on their cultural values for well over 100 years. I mean complete all-out war by the media, by entertainment, by all the so-called lefties that work together with the boys at the top. And the first thing they said in the late 1800s, H.G. Wells said this: we must destroy the family unit. That was taken up from the Fabian Society to the Marxist groups. That became a prime tenet of the Communist Manifesto as well, destruction of the family unit. Everything that stood in the way of takeover as a group, which is really a small clan, you stand up for your relatives and for those you love. If they can destroy all that, and Bertrand Russell put it even better, he said, if we can create an egocentric, narcissistic society where everyone is in love with themselves, they'll stand up for no one. Therefore, the government can rule each person right down to them, and no one will stand up to defend them if we go for them. That's happened today.
And I want you to talk more about that, but they also create counterfeits for different personality types. They know psychos and sociopaths will buy into the narcissism and go ahead and abort their babies, or go ahead and let the CPS take their kid because the kid was trouble anyways. And who cares if my neighbor's being drug away? He had a nicer car than I did. Or, oh, I love being an environmentalist. We're going to sock it to the business owners with more taxes. You know, this rat-like mentality. But for gracious, good people who are centered and realize we should be giving and should have honor and courage and should be informed and be involved in community and stand up for our fellow man, and that we're all part of a larger species, they come in with fake liberal and altruistic systems to then take the best of us and get us working for them towards their goals. So they've typecast everything and have different media, different strata, different propaganda, different niches, different subgroups, and they write all about it even in the 20s. With the fellow that wrote the book Propaganda. I mean, it's all Edward Bernays. It's just all there, and we're here desperately telling people.
Yes, and they knew that stuff from Bernays in the 1800s with the book called The Crowd, and he was taught by experts from childhood for his role, by the way. So they understood that through scientific indoctrination, they could create the kind of society that they wanted. Helpless. They wouldn't even know they were helpless, in fact. But they'd be very happy. And Rockefeller said it himself. He said the people will come to us with perfect docility at the end when they take it all away from the public and give us a substitute system. That can be done for most people. Most people cannot think for themselves. They live in Plato's cave. They can only parrot what each one parrots from the media. And because they're all parroting the same things, they think they're sane. They actually think they're sane. And they're living in a false paradigm, completely a false reality.
Alan Watt, a big part of Fall of the Republic, a big part of the next Fall of the Republic. Get it on DVD, make copies, get it out to people still in the Matrix. We'll be right back.
From his Central Texas Command Center, deep behind enemy lines, the information war continues. It's Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
Okay, I've got a really good memory, but it's not perfect. No one's is. Unless it's the Borg mind of the computer system, and that's full of mistakes. But it's like yesterday, I was up on air talking about Pentagon technology to get the heat resonance biometric print of your body, or even your shoulders and the top of your head. And I got an email saying, Alex, they can't brain scan you from orbit. People got confused by that. I was reading a BBC article from, 5 years ago, about 25 meters away, they can brain scan you, and they're putting these up. It was also CBS News. Then I went into identification, biometric systems of how you walk from the ground, satellites that can identify you once they have your heat resonance print of your shoulders and the top of your head from orbit. Okay, that is admitted. So people get confused by that. Now, I was going from memory on this DC Global Strategic Trends Program, 2007-2036. Here's the London Guardian. Revolution, flash mobs, brain chips, a grim vision of the future. I need to get Paul Watson, Steve Watson, Aaron Dykes, Kurt Nemo, somebody, one of my great writers, researchers, to go through this report 3 years later and show how much of what they talked about that would start happening by 2010 has now begun. Okay? But in here, I had them search in the PDF file, it's 100-something pages, the term neutron weapons. And they did find it, but it talks about how they may be used to end war, kind of what Bertrand Russell was saying of we'll use nuclear war to knock out all our enemies and then have an age of peace. So it must be the U.S. version of this, or perhaps even a PNAC, because I know I've read it and did a story about it, where they talk about we'll use neutron bombs against populations if they try to take over the government. So we need to ferret that out, because, again, these things all mimic each other and are very similar. We're going to go to calls here, but Alan Watt, you were getting into the narcissism, how they train people to not care. I've read Roman historians who wrote about the fact that early on in Rome, they didn't have gladiatorial events, and that they scientifically, as a way to dehumanize, and so people would put up with tyranny, first it was convicted hardcore criminals had to fight. Then it was old slaves. Then it was basically everybody. Then it was your neighbor next week. And as long as the public could cheer for somebody being torn apart this week, that dehumanized everyone and made them enjoy seeing their fellow humans killed. Next week, it would probably be them, and that things got worse and worse as the empire declined. They did this consciously 2,000-plus years ago, right through their fall in 410 to the Visigoth chieftain Alaric. And so this is a much more, I mean, they had scientific control 2,000 years ago. The Greeks had it 2,500 years ago. Continue.
Yes, and what you find too is that the big authors who worked for the Fabian Society, which is just an arm, is a specialized arm to control left-wing for the socialized world that they bring in on behalf of the elite. In fact, it was all started up by the elite themselves and funded by them. And they're all Institute of International Affairs. They're all branches, specialized branches of the same thing. And you'll find their authors have talked about this particular age we're in today. One of them was Arnold Toynbee, a professor at Oxford. He was the one who taught Rhodes Scholars for World Government on behalf of the elite. And he said in his own history books, he's a philosopher and historian, he said that this is what happens at the end of an age when an empire is going down. Now, the elite always move out before the empire crashes, by the way. You never see that the rich people get put under. And they bring homosexuality to the fore, lesbianism, party for the wealthy elites, and then the rest emulate that too. They have fewer and fewer children. They have infanticide. It becomes very common. And so they know the techniques of bringing down society. Everybody's partying, having fun, entertainment, drama, plays staged as never before. And it says that this can be re-implemented at any time, in any culture, in any empire. And the same, as long as you bring in the same formula and sequence, you can recreate that and bring the people down to basically a slave level. And now that was also said by Carroll Quigley, Professor Carroll Quigley, who was a historian for the Council on Foreign Relations, and he taught at the U.S. State Department. He taught the diplomats, and he also taught guys in the Pentagon. So they use knowledge for weapons. Knowledge is power, and it can be weaponized if you understand the techniques and the formulas to reintroduce the same sequences. You can bring people down as you control them. every stage of the way. And today we have nothing. Today we're living, it's like Sodom and Gomorrah. Regular television now is basically pornography. They're bringing up live simulated sex shows on British morning TV. This kind of stuff. It's hard. This is the key too. To break all natural bonding rules that creates a strong cultural society. And it starts really with the man and the woman. That's the first target. You divide them, you conquer them, you then separate the children. The state reared the children with new values, which are all politically correct. Every intake in kindergarten is taught to a scientific formula, so that the intake in the previous year are given a little upgrade from the previous year before them for what they will expect to happen culturally in society in their lifetime, so that when it happens, they think it's normal.